Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. I always like to drop my book. I always like to throw in some chronolog chronological stuff here. It's actually 1:11 p.m., which is a magical spiritual number. That's a pretty good sign, Amy.
Right?
And it's January 6th. So happy New Year, everybody. And my second official interview of the new year, and I'm excited about that. Uh, what a fascinating, interesting, almost defies adjectives to describe Amy and her journey. And I've known her now a few months, and we're going to jump into that in one quick second. But I have some PR people advising me, and they say, Calvin, you got to do some commercials. So, first commercial, and this applies to Amy too, in her channel, is subscribe because we live in a world, and all you got to do is just go there and click the button, subscribe, because it helps Amy, it helps me grow our podcast. Because Amy has a podcast too. We'll talk about that in a second. And then finally, one of my publishers said, "Calvin, get up there and say there's a tortoise in my hair, which now has 6 awards, including a Kirkus star." And last week I got the gold medal for Global Book Awards. I keep getting awards. So my one of my publishers said it's now available in hard copy. So tell your viewers to go to their local library and ask them to get this book and get this book. 10 Things I Learned from the Billionaire because I worked for a billionaire for 25 years. You learn stuff. So ask your library to get it, and that's my commercial. And now back to Amy. So Amy and I met within the good graces of the universe and connections, and so I had actually been interviewed by Amy, I think back in November, and now it's my turn to interview Amy. Um, so fascinating and refreshing and different, and such a powerful story to tell. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things, folks. She was adopted and lived with a very abusive, adoptive, manipulative, bad family, and she became a single mother of a young boy on the spectrum. She'll talk about that. And eventually, at some point in her life, she decided she has to give back in some amazing ways. And we're going to talk about that. Her giving back. She's got Passion from Pain, which is a podcast, and she's written about that, and she's about to start teaching about these things, and she's written about these things, and I've watched some of her podcasts. Uh, by the way, you should be on network television, not me, but you. And that's a high compliment. No, because you have such a smooth flow and such a real, and it kind of embraces you as you do, and it's just such a natural. I do this, I kind of spit along, but you just have this gift. This is going to be a special hour. Uh, uh, um, kind of diving into the world of Amy and the things you've done. So, my monologue is officially concluded, folks. So, listen up. Amy, why don't you kind of just say a couple of words, background, and then we'll talk about your journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Calvin, for all of that actually, and the wonderful compliment. I never thought about network TV before, but that would be something, huh? That could be one of my big goals, maybe when in 10 years, that would be all right. But yeah, it's been one crazy journey, and I didn't set out to be a podcaster. I didn't set out to do what I'm doing now. It kind of just ended up happening through some kind of aha moment. I was forced to look at, okay, well, what am I going to do now after my husband and I sold a couple of businesses, at 44 years old. And I'm like, well, that's not going to sustain me for the rest of my life, so I got to figure out my next move. And then I started thinking about everything that I've been through, And coming from where I came from, adopted at a young age, living through the manipulation of the adopted family, starting work at 11 to help support this family, it was tough. And then being a single mom of an autistic kid, leaving my family behind, the toughest decision I ever made. But I knew if I didn't leave them, that my life was gonna continue down this path. And I was headed in some really dark places. And so I knew, for to save my life and to provide a better life for him, I had to leave. And so that's what I did. I started all over with nothing and nobody as a single mom with an autistic son, and built myself up to where I'm at now. And that's when I was looking at everything and decided, you know what? I have one hell of a story to tell. um, and I can help people, because during my 20-year recovery from the manipulation and the mental abuse and just unwiring and unpacking all of that, I learned so much and realized I could help so many other people that are going through very similar situations. And that's what I decided to do, and put passion from pain together. Originally, it was going to be a course in a book. But in doing the course and book, I was having some amazing conversations with therapists and psychologists and other survivors of different just crappy situations, I guess. And I decided those conversations would be way more impactful than any one book or course that I could ever put together. So I backburnered all that other stuff for a little bit and started the podcast. Now the book and course is going to be coming out here in 2026, but I felt a pull or a calling to get the podcast out first. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's been such a crazy journey. The amount of people who wanted to come on and talk and share their experience and their expertise has just been phenomenal. I wasn't expecting that at all. But here we are, and I love it, and I love what I'm doing, and I love hearing from the listeners and the audience, the people that it's landing on and helping, and that's really the most incredible,
Yeah,
rewarding piece, really.
correct. We podcasters, I think there's 9 million of us.
Wow.
I think I read that somewhere recently. There's 9 million of us. We have a very, and I actually believe in the future that this podcasting thing is going to keep growing. And people have X amount of time, for viewing and stuff, I don't know about network television, and that's gonna have some growing pains, and we got this new world of streaming, which is not new, and that's even gonna take different things. But I keep seeing and hearing that what we do, podcasting, is going to grow, and our audiences are going to grow, and so we have responsibilities. So and again, I've watched a bunch of your I sit and I'm a retired guy, and I have the time to do this kind of stuff, and I kind of dive in, and I've been watching your podcast. So let's talk about you. What moment in your life that truly marked the shift from pain to purpose? So you went from pain to purpose. Was there a specific time in your life that you decided to change and
So
do
the
this?
most transformative moment was the moment that I realized what was happening to me. And that was, oddly enough, a very unexpected moment. It wasn't through a bunch of reflection or anything like that. It just happened. I ended up in urgent care because I was having a severe panic attack. At this point in the game, I had been on so many different mental health medications for depression and anxiety. At one point, I was prescribed medications for bipolar, which I wasn't, but they thought that I was. They were talking about putting me on medication for schizophrenia. I didn't have that either. But this was part of the family's manipulation and trying to control me. Part of that was they wanted to get me medically diagnosed with something, so that I could be disabled, so they could collect a paycheck. But that was part of the
Oh,
manipulation that I was
my
fighting.
goodness.
But I ended up in urgent care because I was having a panic attack. I had just, and I wanted to get some Xanax. That's how I knew how to deal with panic attacks, was medication. And so I ended up there, and I met a doctor that day that I'd never seen before, haven't seen since. Um, and he was the first one that really looked at me and said, "Hold on, wait a minute. What is going on here? You're in here pretty regularly looking for medication for anxiety. I mean, this happens a lot. And you're under the care of a mental health provider, so this isn't making a whole lot of sense why you're here." And so he started asking me a bunch of questions about my medical history. And, in that he learned that I'd been put on antidepressants at a very young age, at the age of 13. And that was because I didn't get to have a normal childhood. And I was depressed, because I was working through my childhood. I didn't realize that was the problem at the time. I just thought there was something wrong with me because that's what everybody said. There was something wrong with me and I needed pills to fix it. And so 13 to 25, I've got this doctor now telling me that, at this point of the game, something should have at least stabilized you. Not made you better, not made you happy necessarily, but at least have you stabilized at this point. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing you get worse. You're doing therapy, you're doing all the things, but nothing's working. He says, I don't think you have these problems that require these chemicals to fix. He asked me what was going on in my life, and I told him. And he asked me how long it was going on. And I told him, since I was 11, I started working for the family. And, that continued all through high school. I told him about several suicide attempts that I'd had in the past while on these medications. She said, it makes sense. Um, Again, you don't need these medications. Your problem is very much situational. You know, any normal person would be depressed under the circumstances that you're living. Any normal person would have anxiety with the stress that you're under, especially at the age that you started all of this, and you were going through puberty at the time and dealing with that whole mess. Of course, you were having these symptoms pop up. And so he said, you don't need these medications. You need to change your situation. And that's when he educated me on mental abuse and emotional abuse
Mm.
and financial abuse. Never heard of it before.
Wow.
And I thought abuse was bruises and scars and trips to the hospital and restraining orders. I didn't know anything about this whole manipulative dark psychology piece. And why would I? I was a kid. I thought this was normal life, right? This was what life was. And I was just always very thankful to have a family, right? And I was always told, hey, we chose you. Most people don't get to choose their children, but we got to choose you. You're special. So the manipulation was very, very
Wow.
thick in the way that it made me feel like I was loved. It made me feel like I was a part of this family. So it was very hard to see the mental abuse and the manipulation that was happening, especially when you're a child. you
Wow.
know, and so this doctor really opened my eyes, and it was just like a slap upside the head, like, holy cow, this guy's right. And I looked back at my entire life, and every single moment, I could see the manipulation at that point. And so, I looked at my son and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be his life. I can stay with these people and continue what I'm doing. And I know where that road was going to take me. It was going to either end up in suicide, and I was going to leave my son with these people to do what they were going to do to me to him. And I couldn't do that, or I take him and I leave and I go the route of a single mother with nobody. And so I chose that road. Um, and I haven't spoken to my family in 12 years. I tried to have kind of a relationship with them, but it just really didn't work out. But so it just decided it was best that I didn't speak with them. But I took my son and started all over brand new. Got an apartment, found a apartment complex that kind of sympathized with the situation because I had no money, I had no resources. They had control of everything, control of
Mm.
all of my finances, bank accounts, everything.
Wow.
So they sympathized. But I had 30 days to, come up with the money to pay the rent. So they let me move in with no money down. I did get some help from some county services, but I still had a bill I had to pay. I got the first job that I could within walking distance, and that was washing dishes at a restaurant. I could walk there. And they allowed my son to come to work with me to hang out while I worked. So it was perfect. 5 days later, I was waiting tables and making tips. And I learned really quickly that my personality and my ability to connect with people very much affected how much money I could make. And so I went from making 25 to $50 a day to $200 plus a day, just by learning that one little trick. And when you're in that situation, $100 to $200 a day, I mean, you feel like you're a millionaire at that point. And all of a sudden, okay, everything's going to be okay. But I still had to come off of all of the medication, so I had the physical symptoms and the mental symptoms of dealing with that. So I had that storm going on top of rebuilding this life. And what I ended up deciding to do instead of going towards medication again, I went to the library and I started studying psychology and dark psychology and mind control and manipulation and mental abuse. I started studying anxiety and habits and patterns, and I really dove into that subject matter because part of my healing, I needed to understand what happened to me, why it happened, and more importantly, how it happened, so I could ensure that it would never happen again. I needed to fix that piece right there so I could calm myself so that I could trust myself to have other relationships in the future, because I was noticing it was really hard for me to make friendships. It was hard anyway because I didn't get to have that childhood and make friends as a kid. But now wanting to make friends and in new relationships, it was proving to be difficult because I didn't trust anybody now. So I had to learn all of that again, and that was 20 years of putting myself back together and studying this subject matter while rebuilding my life. I took every opportunity that I could for promotion in the restaurant industry. Next thing you know, I'm a shift leader, then an assistant manager, then I'm running restaurants, then I'm a district manager, district training manager. And so I got paid essentially for my business education instead of paying some fancy place for the piece of paper on the wall, I guess. And then I got to the point that I was confident in myself that I could run my own businesses. And my husband, we've been together for 18 years now. Um, and we've got a couple kiddos together now. And we ran an auto body shop and mechanic shop together. And that was an incredible journey. I loved doing that with him. And I didn't realize how much my skills from the restaurant applied to mechanics and auto body, but it did, and made it proved to be very helpful to him. And so we went from one store to two stores to three stores. And, he was starting to have some health issues. And so I said, hey, why don't we just sell and you take some time to calm down and, decompress and de stress. And so that's what we did. And then 6 months after we sold, we discovered that my intuition was right on. We discovered that he had stage 4 colon cancer. um and so that's kind of what we were dealing with, and that's when I was looking at, okay, well, what do I do now? If something happens to my husband, what am I going to do to support my 3 kids? Yeah, we have the funding from the businesses that we sold, but that's not going to last forever, um, especially if there is no other income coming in. And so that's when I decided to put Passion from Pain together and take my experiences to help other people overcome and put my story together for them.
Okay. How did the brand and the movement of Passion from Praying come together? Uh, uh, um, was there a specific? I mean, I'm just sitting here listening. By the way, you see, I'm taking notes, I'm
Yeah.
writing. I'm an interviewer who actually takes notes,
Hmm.
like you're my teacher, and I'm taking notes, and I
Love it.
need to. So, how did that passion for fame first come to life?
So I was putting my story together, packaging it, figuring out in what way can I present this and in what way can I help people with this story. And through that, I decided that I was going to help people by helping them through these situations in the aftermath. And that's when I decided that okay, I found this passion for helping people, and I didn't realize I was doing it the whole time I was working in restaurants, but kind of as a bartender, a lot of times you end up being, kind of the bartender psychologist or therapist, right? And so this is something I'd been doing for many years and helping people talk through certain situations and whatnot and using what I'd been studying. So I've been using it for a long time. I just didn't realize it back then. So I was thinking about those past situations and past conversations I've had with past customers, employees. They come in with their personal problems and things that are happening that may be affecting their job. And I was thinking about that and I was like, wow, I can really put this together to help other people. And that's when I discovered that okay, through the painful situations I discovered this passion. And in looking at different stories and studying different people, you find that a lot of people and a lot of really great people who've done incredible things, it was born from some sort of painful situation, some sort of adversity that they had gone through. And in a moment of my life is not going to be like this anymore, they found some sort of spark or fire to create some sort of purpose and a passion for that purpose. And that's where the name came from. I thought it was very fitting for what I was trying to put together and what I was doing and the stories that I was telling. And that's really kind of where it came from. Just kind of this whole thought process of what I've been through and what I've been doing.
Okay. So how has all this evolved from those early days to where you are now? I
Yeah.
briefly touched on some of the things that you're doing, but
Mhm.
how has this evolution taken shape? Because it keeps on evolving with all the things that are coming up.
It does. It does, and the more people I meet, the more opportunities present themselves, which is kind of one of the incredible things about this journey, and especially being a podcaster, is you meet so many incredible people that want to help you take it in so many different directions. But yeah, originally I had the book, and I do still have the book, which is almost done, and I do have the course called Finding Strength After Toxicity, and that course is all about just discovering your strength to go on a healing journey. One of the things I don't like to do is, say, hey, this is the way to heal yourself after going through a situation, because it's not a linear process. It's not the same for every single person. It's going to be a very individualized experience. But what I do is I guide them through and give them framework to discover what that is for themselves. And so that's what the course Finding Strength After Toxicity is, and finding the strength to continue down that journey, especially when you feel like maybe the things you're doing is not working, which is just part of the process and part of finding out what is going to work for you. One of the things that worked for me that doesn't work for everybody else, and that's perfectly okay, was rock and roll and heavy metal music. It is not for everybody, and I get it, but it was absolutely for me and is very much part of my personality. And that's where, I kind of learned that, it's going to be very different for everybody. So, in that, we developed the course, which is going to be coming out here at the beginning of this year as well. And then, of course, the podcast. And, I do deep dives with the solo episodes into different psychological concepts, healing concepts, spiritual concepts, just delivering all sorts of different healing modalities and concepts. And I do bring in some of the research and some of the science into it to explain why things are happening to us, and that it's a very natural process. You're working perfectly, your body and your brain's working perfectly as it's supposed to be. and you're not broke and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I think that that provides a lot of comfort to a lot of people going through these situations too. It's like, okay, my body's doing what it's supposed to do considering where I came from. And having those kind of realizations kind of helps keep them on track to continue down the road that they're going. And so, really, Passion from Pain is about helping people just discover that journey and that path that's right for them. Um, Getting all the tools together, getting all the resources together, and just packaging it so they can discover what's right for them.
Okay. I want to go back a second. I'm listening, um, just to kind of talk about manipulation. So you're young, you're a kid, and you're being manipulated.
Yeah.
Uh, um, do do the people do people I'm trying to spit this out. Do the people who are manipulating you know they're actually manipulating you, or they have a goal and they want uh uh um and wh- so do the people know they're manipulating? I guess some do and some don't. Why is it hard? Because manipulation takes place at every age and
Mhm.
everywhere. Well, why is it hard in general for people um, to realize they're being manipulated? Because I think you're exceptional that you
Mhm.
saw it at a young age.
Yeah.
But why is it hard for people to realize they're being manipulated?
One, we don't want to see it. We don't want to think that people are willing to do these kind of things to us in order for some sort of personal gain for themselves. We want to think that, everybody is going to be, upfront with us, and everybody's being honest with us, and everybody loves us, and everybody has the best intentions for us, and that's what we want to think. And that's honestly the fairy tale, I guess. But one thing that I've learned, and it kind of gets hard to distinguish. One, people are very opportunistic, right? They're going to jump on an opportunity when they can, and oftentimes, that's going to mean stepping on somebody on their way up, right? And so that, may happen. Was it intentional? Sometimes, maybe yes, maybe no, right? Does that make them necessarily a manipulative or abusive person? Not necessarily, right? People are opportunistic. But it's when the patterns are there, and it resurfaces over and over, and they're consistently doing these things to you to keep you under some sort of control for some sort of personal gain or benefit. That's when you're crossing that line into the dark psychology, the manipulation, the mind control, the mental abuse, is when that pattern is consistently showing itself. And that's why it's difficult too, because it's, at what point is it a pattern, and at what point is it just things have happened? And it's really easy for us to forgive and forget. We're told to forgive, we're told to forget, right? And so it's very individual, and you have to really look at things and decide, okay, well, am I being taken advantage of? And what is the motivation? Most of the times there is some sort of motivation for it. They want something from you. And so you've got to determine what that is as well. So it's hard to detect, mainly because we don't want to think that it's happening to us. But it does, and it can.
Amy, is there also, I'm trying to understand this, there's an emotional addiction too, isn't there?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
In this whole process, you
Oh
get
yeah.
emotionally addicted.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, you can get emotionally addicted, or you are. They give you the really good times, and you hang on to those really good times. And then you have a few bad times, and this is where you kind of get into that. Well, they're having a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody has bad times in their relationships, and this is where it just gets very, very confusing for people. And this is why it's really hard to detect and understand because you do have those good times that you latch onto, and you do become addicted to that. You end up getting what's called a trauma bond sometimes as well.
Okay.
So there's so much to it, so many different layers to it, which is why I go deeper into a lot of these conversations on the podcast because there's so much to it.
Mm, it really is.
Yep.
Uh, just a little slightly off topic. You are in chapter 17 in Rebirth, Stories of Unyielding Courage by Lima McLean and Friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's me.
right, chapter 17
Yep.
is you. Okay.
Yep.
So this is on Amazon for folks. I'll have the link for folks to check that out. Um, it's a great cover. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. She
Kind
did a
of,
really good job.
yeah, she sure did. She sure did. Um, in my studying you, because I have to study you,
Yep.
there's a quote I think I saw: "Choosing to change your pattern is an act of rebellion."
Mhm.
What kind of rebellion is that?
Rebelling against everything that people taught you to be, rebelling against what you thought people wanted you to be, rebelling against what people told you to be, rebelling against what society necessarily wanted you to be, rebelling against those kind of ideas, and embracing your authentic self, whatever that is for you. And just rebelling against what everybody else wants from you, choosing you over everybody else is really where that idea of rebellion comes from.
Okay, okay, okay. Um, why do you believe that focused anger can be sacred?
It's the most liberating emotion, really, when you focus your anger. Because one way that I like to put it is, okay, you can spray gasoline everywhere. Gasoline is your anger. You can spray it everywhere. Light a match and you have an inferno. Or you can pour the gasoline into an engine of a car, and now you can go forward. You can use that gasoline to go forward into whatever direction that you want to go. So you focused your anger, the gasoline, into going where you want to go. So using that anger, and I'm never going to be here again. I'm never going to be this person. This person's never going to treat me like this. Nobody's ever going to treat me like this. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to be in this situation again. And using that anger to say, never again, and choosing differently for yourself. There's many examples of where that focused anger has brought about incredible change. You look at oh goodness, I can't remember her name, but the gal who created MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers.
Oh, sure,
Uh,
sure.
Incredible example of focused anger, and she created a movement from it.
Okay. Um, how do people, and you are a poster person for this, how do people rediscover themselves after all these years, like shrinking and
Mm-hmm.
cowering? And how do people, you did
Yeah,
so magnificently.
thank you.
Um, how do people rediscover themselves? It's following what you did.
Mm-hmm. It's I'm not gonna lie, not easy. It's a lot of self reflection, um, a lot of journaling, a lot of studying yourself and your patterns, a lot of figuring out what you want from your life, who you want to be, and who you want to be around, and who you want to be associated with. And a lot of those answers come from where you want to go and where you want to be. And so it seems cliche, but you start with the end goal in mind and you kind of deconstruct and work backwards. um you know at the same time unpacking who you currently are, and in doing that, and then putting yourself in new experiences, in the experiences for the person that you want to become. I have a whole episode on faking it until you make it, and that's just about putting yourself in these situations, whether you're ready or not, until you finally are ready, it feels natural again. And so like I said, it's not an easy process, but it's definitely doable one step at a time in the direction of who you want to become. But it takes a lot of reflection, and a lot of thought, and a lot of journaling helps a lot. If you're not a writer, open up your video camera and just start talking into the camera. You don't got to post it anywhere, but just that
I like
deep thought
that.
and reflection.
I like that.
Yeah,
I never even thought of that myself. I think that's
yeah,
brilliant. Talking to the camera, that's a great kind of journalism.
yeah.
Journaling, that's a great idea. I'm always writing stuff down, but that would be great. Smart. I like that. Um, let's go off topic for a little bit. Take a deep breath because this is heavy stuff. And so here's a couple of Calvin questions that I borrowed from one of my favorite journalists. Uh, Here goes. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with. And it could be a
Goodness.
couple answers, there's no rules.
Wow. Um, Living or dead, somebody I'd like to spend the day with. Oddly enough, I'd like to spend the day with Ozzy Osbourne. That would be
Wow.
just fun. Is
Wow.
one of my favorite rock and roll singers of all time. And I think another one would have to be Mick Jagger.
Okay.
Amazing, amazing life. And, God, how he's still rocking and rolling at his age. I went to go see him in 2024 at the Jazz Festival in New Orleans. And
Wow.
holy cow, he didn't miss a beat. It was incredible to watch.
So
But
you alluded to you're heavily into rock,
yeah.
and 3 miles from where I sit in this chair, this guy Bruce Springsteen lives.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and this is, Bruce Springsteen country. That he was born here and he still lives here. And 15 years ago, when I started my quote journalism career, I decided I figured I might as well get involved with the Asbury Park, Jersey Shore rock scene. And
Yeah.
so I was hanging out, and I came out of the '60s, so I wasn't necessarily a rocker. I was
Uh-huh.
a folkie, and I'm
Okay.
still stuck in folk music. And I am who I am. It's hard to break the mold. I was a Peter, Paul, and Mary guy.
There you
You
go.
know,
Nothing wrong with that. They made some
nothing
great
wrong with
music.
that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I did taste a lot of rock
Hmm.
music, and for hanging out after a couple of years, I was asked to co-host a radio show called Rock on Radio, and every week they'd have another rock band, all indie stuff, would come in, and we'd interview them. I didn't know a hell of a lot about it. I still don't,
Yeah.
but I came up with some off-topic questions like I'm asking you right now.
Yeah.
But after a year and a half of doing that, every week you're starting to learn about the journey of rockers and stuff. It was interesting, interesting, interesting. Um, do you have any favorite movies?
Movies. So, I'm not one to sit down a whole lot.
Okay.
I'm constantly moving. And so my favorite movie though from when I was a kid, and it always kind of was an escape when I needed one, was The Princess Bride. I love that movie, and I can say that line for line from beginning to end because I've watched it so many times. So definitely that's up there as one of my favorite movies of all time, for sure.
Yeah, that's gotten some resurgence lately because it was one of Rob Reiner's
Yeah.
movies, and it was a fabulous movie. And of course, I just read this morning, as a matter of fact, that's so funny, a story about Peter Falk,
Oh, really?
yeah, who played the grandfather,
Yeah.
and actually, and I just read it. Read it this morning on Reels. It popped up that Billy Crystal, who with Carol Kane there, they with that old couple. When in later years, Peter Falk he had severe Alzheimer's,
Oh,
dementia, and Billy Crystal would still go visit him and
very cool.
hold his hand and Billy Crystal will try to make, Peter Falk laugh because they were together in The Princess Bride. Interesting stuff. It's so funny. I just read that this morning.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right.
That's exciting for me.
Let's go back to work a bit. So somebody comes to you, they want some help. Um, uh, what's the first thing that you kind of do to kind of discover the toxicity and you kind of map out the things that have to be done?
Well, first thing, absolutely listen to their story, um, where they've come from, and everything that they've gone through. Um, Definitely listen with, of course, a empathetic, sympathetic ear, but also, with a kind of analytical ear at the same time, wanting to understand what they went through so I can know what information to point them to so they can learn what happened and why it happened. Next step is to, okay, what have you already done? What healing work have you already tried? Um, and what has worked and what hasn't worked. That way we don't waste any time on stuff that you don't like and stuff you've already tried. And we can continue the things that you already are, there are things that are already working for you. Do we need professional help? Do we need a therapist? Do we need a psychologist involved? A lot of times that's necessary too. Um, and just kind of take their personality into account. What is really going to stick with them, because everybody's so different and we're going to try all kinds of different things, and it's okay if things don't work, and we try but we pivot, and we understand that there's going to be setbacks and there's going to be steps forward. It's going to be two steps forward and maybe a step back and three steps forward and a step or two back sometimes, and that's just the journey. It's, it is what it is, but we don't give up and we don't try. We don't give up and we try. Don't try. Tripping over my words. My goodness, happens to me too. But and then we do a lot of journaling and we do a lot of talking. And I keep myself open for them. Um, and so, they just understand that I'm there for them and with them, and helping them with as much of the resources as we can. A big part of it though is education. A big part of it is education, because I do believe that education and knowledge is really what's gonna move the needle for you. But then applying it and holding you them accountable to doing the work, because just reading it and not applying it, it's not gonna do a whole lot for you.
Have you, I mean, I know you've seen transformations. Is any particular one without violating
Mm-hmm.
any one particular transformation that you've witnessed stand out
I
in one of
had
your clients?
Yeah, I had a gal who was actually older, who was dealing with a lot of childhood trauma. Spent decades just living her life for other people, and finally in her 70s she decided, you know what? I'm done. I'm gonna live for me. And she ended up taking my course, and now she helps other people in her age group go through the same processes, who other women who are still holding on to childhood traumas from their past, and she helps them kind of talk through it, overcome a lot of that uh, grief and trauma that they were packing around, and even at their age, it's, you're just never too late to deal with it. And so that's one of the things that she does now. And she actually called me about a week ago, just really thankful for the information that I gave her, and the understanding or the courage to just do this at this stage of her life. She was really timid at first when she first joined, but now she's just such a light. I love her, and we meet for coffee every now and then, and I don't know, I just get a big hug from her and a big smile from her. And I got another friend who actually travels to Tanzania every now and then.
Um,
And he helps a bunch of people out there now too. He was going through a terrible divorce, and his one of those situations where his wife was just not letting him see the kids, holding the kids back, holding the kids against him. Just one of those really volatile, toxic divorce situations. And he's learned to kind of navigate that in a way now that it doesn't necessarily affect him the way that it was, because it was pushing him towards substance abuse. And now he's learned how to kind of deal with that without using substances, so that he can be there for his kids. And now he helps other fathers through the same processes. And so that's what I really love about this, is seeing people take the information and then go help other people with it. And that's really what I love about all of this, is just seeing it kind of spread, kind of like the ripple in the pond.
Okay. The next question is very take me several hours to explain it. We don't have several hours, but what role does forgiveness play in what you do, and what it doesn't play in what you do? How important is forgiveness?
Well, so there's many ways. It's a tough one, you know. So the big question: do I forgive the people for what they did? And the answer is yes. I do forgive them, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to continue a relationship with them. And so there's a difference between, you know, forgiving doesn't mean I have to allow them back into my life, right? Forgiving releases you from holding on to those feelings. And so it is a huge thing for yourself. And so you hear this a lot. You forgive for yourself, not for them, right? Yeah, you can forgive them if you want to repair that relationship and allow them back in, but you're still always going to have that awkward elephant in the room if they've always done this, right? Even if you have forgiven them. So it really is a thing for yourself, so that you can get past the anger, you can get past, the idea that you were wronged. You can move past those feelings, and move on. So it is a big piece of it. And it's probably one of the hardest things to do.
Huh.
It really is. It really is. Getting yourself to that point. Now, it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to forgive immediately. You can absolutely take your time to get yourself to that place. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with allowing yourself to feel the anger and the resentment towards the people that have done things to you. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, you need to go through that. You have to. It's part of the process, but you do need to get yourself to where you do forgive, so that you can get past that. You don't want to live in that resentment and that anger, because that's where it festers, and it can become something really volatile and
Oh
toxic
yeah.
within yourself.
Oh yeah.
And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah. We could talk about that for a couple hours
Oh, yeah.
off camera. The whole thing about forgiveness. Well, I've got stories.
uh,
Anyway, moving on. I gotta control myself. Um, why was it important for you to create, Passion from Pain, the podcast, and what do you want like listeners to feel after they listen to one of those episodes?
Yeah, so it was important to create the podcast, like I said, having the conversations with all of these different survivors and experts, I felt was going to have way more of an impact than just one book or course that I could put out there, because it's expanding the conversation beyond my experience. And that's why I felt the need to do the podcast, because I'm just one person with one experience and one viewpoint. And that's what I love about the podcast, is it brings in the other viewpoints, and it can change my perspective. And one thing I decided when I put Passion from Pain together was that it was going to be a collection of resources and tools, because I do know healing is not linear. Healing is not one size fits all. Um, and so the more tools and the more resources I have together, the more people I can actually help, because I know that it ain't necessarily all going to come from me. Other people are going to have pieces of the puzzle for different people. So that was really the goal with the podcast, was just bringing so much other information to one spot.
Okay. Now to drift into little topics about women
Yeah.
and empowerment and stuff, which you are, you're like a torchbearer. And I have
Like a
some background in the subject because for 5 years I was on the advisory committee of the Women's Health Institute at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. So, and I still, I'm not necessarily part of that, but the group, that advisory committee, we meet for dinner once a month and discuss a lot of these topics. So I've been taken into to women empowerment, and in the '60s I was a women's liver, uh, um, and I've written in my tortoise novel. I didn't like the Cro-Magnon caveman, who's I guess is closest one of our closest ancestors, because I think, and I tongue in cheek this. I think the Cro-Magnon caveman was the species who created misogyny because he made a woman walk behind him
mm,
because he could,
mhm.
and so I've always been really sensitive to that. Um, why do you think that so many women are conditioned to shrink themselves? And what does women empowerment really mean to you?
Women are conditioned to shrink themselves. It's generational trauma. It's handed down from the mothers and the grandmothers. I mean, like you said, it happened. You think you can pinpoint, kind of when it started there, and so it's just been handed down.
Yeah,
And you have mothers and grandmothers who didn't know any better, didn't know how to break the cycles, and now we're living through a time that we are breaking those cycles. We are teaching our daughters that, no, this is not okay. You are powerful in your own right. And, I teach my daughter the same thing. Is one of the other things that I do, or one of the other missions behind Passion from Pain, is breaking those generational traumas and curses. And I'm doing that for my kiddos, especially for my daughter. But that's what it comes down to, is it's just what we've been taught.
okay.
So
A couple of thoughts about motherhood.
yeah.
And I marvel, truly marvel at your journey with your son. And when I became a journalist, one of my first things that I did is I started doing stories on autism.
Mm,
And I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I had gone to a play in New York. I was asked to critique. I went to the premiere, sat in the first row, and I had to critique it, but it was called Self-Injurious Behavior, about a mother and her autistic son, which was riveting. I have a picture actually with the kid, and I'm a groupie, and I love that stuff. But I've done a dozen different stories on autism, and it's powerful. So how did early motherhood test your strength in ways that you might not have even been prepared for?
holy cow, a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
A lot. Oh my lord. I can say that I am, it's going to sound weird, but I'm glad that I had my autistic son first. It made the other two so much easier. The things that I went through with my autistic son, the stories that I have, I love them and I love him, but oh goodness, did he test me? Did he test me? In ways that, oh Lord, let's just say we were on a first name basis with the local police department.
Mm,
But that's okay. They knew him and they understood. There was one time that, oh Lord, I could tell you a quick story about him. And when the police were questioning my husband for his attempted murder, he's not dead, of course. He was not murdered, but that's the direction that they were going. But one day, he was 10. And we're like, okay, Austin, go ahead and do the dishes. Because we were very much, giving him responsibility. He's got to learn how to do stuff, right? And so he, did chores. So he'd do the dishes. And we ended up just chilling around the house. And next thing you know, it's really quiet. When it's really quiet and you got kids in the house, something is wrong. And so we go to look, and he's not in the kitchen. Can't find him anywhere. Check the whole house, nowhere to be found. And so we're looking for him everywhere. And behind our house was this river called the Pudding River. And we had just been down there 2 days before fishing in this river. And we go to check, and there's his clothes on the bank of this river.
Jesus.
Footprints going into the river, but no footprints coming out of the river. And we're like, oh my, oh God. And so we call 911 thinking the worst because we can't find him. We're calling for him and we cannot find him anywhere. And so we called 911 and they, of course, dispatch a boat. They're, looking for a kid's body. They pull my husband aside and, of course, they're questioning him, thinking if they find a body, well, dad's going to be the one that's responsible. And so finally they bring the dog. The dog finally shows up. 2 minutes later, after they release this dog, they find my son on the other side of the river, naked,
Wow.
down in the bushes, hiding. And he was there the whole time. And he could hear us looking for him. And he was laughing. And he thought this was a fun game of hide and seek
Wow.
because he didn't want to go do the dishes. So he went out to the river, took his clothes off, swam across that river, and hid. And so, of course, the police found him and all of that. So, these are just one story of some of the fun stuff that we've been through with him. Like I said, he's on a first name basis with the police department.
Oh, wow.
And so, there was a whole story about him in the paper and everything. And then, of course, that's when the police department was like, okay, well, we have this tracking system. Let's put that on him. So if he leaves the house, we know and all that stuff. And so they had some resources for us for him at that point that, we didn't know about before. But there's definitely so many things that we've been through with the autism.
Wow.
But it's definitely kept life very interesting.
I
That's
bet.
for sure. That's for sure.
Wow. Wow. Yo, again, I've said this a few times. I marvel at you, your journey, what you're doing, truly. And I can understand some of this stuff, and uh, um, I have grasp and understanding of some of this stuff from my own background. Um, So logically, this is a nice question for me to ask. What daily things that you do keep you grounded? Because you are grounded.
Yep. I goodness, I listen to, oddly enough, a lot of heavy metal music. It actually helps keep me
Wow.
grounded quite a bit. But
Wow.
I do exercising. I go for walks. Going out in nature actually really helps. Oddly enough, while I listen to my heavy metal music, I don't know why, but it is something that just really speaks to me and is something that is for me. And I talk about this a lot. You got to find that one thing that just really ignites your soul, really grounds you. For me, it's that. And so this is why I talk about it a lot. It's the reason for the top hat. It's just part of the whole culture of the music. Now, I'm deeply saddened. I was never gifted with the ability to play any kind of music or sing at all. I would have been a hell of a manager, that's for sure. But no, I can't sing. But it does. It absolutely keeps me grounded. The lyrics, I identify with the lyrics, especially the angry lyrics, because I did have a lot of anger in me. And so it's something I related to a lot. And so if you can relate to it on a very deep level, that's what you gotta cling to.
Well, I'm a music guy too. I picked out a few songs in my day, and I write about it in my tortoise novel. I there were times in my days as I was going through emotional upheavals that I would latch on to Donovan and Catch the Wind, and I would listen to it for days on end, just
Yep.
sitting here listening to Catch the Wind, and also Scarborough Fair, Simon and Garfunkel, days on end, just listening to it constantly, even to this day. And I don't think a lot of people really think about music, but it's one of mankind's great gifts,
Yeah.
music.
Absolutely.
Just great,
Absolutely.
great. We could talk about that, you and I, for a
Oh
long
yeah.
time. I know sometimes I get down. We
Hmm.
all get down, and sometimes when I'm down, I go to Beethoven's Sixth, and I
Yep.
listen to Ode to Joy, and
Hmm.
I listen to that, and it just lifts me up
Yep.
that some person could create that sound.
Hmm.
So I completely understand what you're talking about because it does the same thing for me.
Hmm.
And gosh, I could tell you stories. I once listened to one of my mother's favorite pieces for 3 days. She's gone, and her picture's right over there. And I look at her 12 hours a day. I was pretty close to my mother,
Oh.
and a lot of who I am is because of my mother. And I listened to that song, her favorite song, for 3 days, and to my wife. Actually, literally all day long, hours and hours and hours. And to my wife in the kitchen, she brought out the F word, told me to stop effing listening to that song, and I stopped. But it was great for me, great therapy for me. And then a strange thing happened a day or two after that. I was texting with a friend of mine, and he asked me a question, and I wrote yes, and I put the
Mhm.
phone down, and I was done. And 15 minutes later, I picked up the phone, and in the outgoing message was the word "mom" typed. I
Oh.
didn't type it,
Yeah.
and I don't have voice activation. So I figured it
Hmm.
out. My mother got permission from whomever, came out and typed "mom" because I listened to her favorite song for 3 days,
Yeah.
and that's all she had to do. And actually, that 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 music, that whole music story. I was writing. I was trying to finish Tortoise, and I was stuck for 3 months. Couldn't write.
Wow.
And that piece of energy by my mother typing "mom" 'cause she did,
Yeah.
was enough for me to finish my
Yeah.
novel. Anyway,
That's
we
all it takes.
that's
Sometimes
all
you
it takes.
got to.
So my last question to you.
Yeah.
We could, you know what, Amy, we could just talk and talk and talk
Oh yeah.
another time because hopefully you'll come back and we'll talk more. Um, what does it truly mean? And this is heavy, to choose yourself.
That is a heavy one.
It's heavy.
But what it truly meant to choose myself, goodness, it meant freedom, it meant liberation, and it meant actually choosing the ones that I actually cared about and loved, which was my kids. And choosing myself and choosing to be myself, it makes me a better person for those people that I love. Kind of like putting your oxygen mask on first on the airplane, right? They tell you that. You have to care for yourself first. You have to choose yourself first. And when you do, you're gonna find that everything aligns better for you in your life. The pieces just kind of start to fall into place. The right people start arriving in your life at the right times when you start choosing yourself. When you start living for other people and start living for their agenda and you're not in alignment with yourself, that's when everything goes off the rails because it's not you. It's not for you. That's for them, and so that's really what that's what happens, and I'm a perfect example of that, until I started choosing myself, man, my life was crap. But as soon as I did, man, the right people and the right opportunities, and
Yeah,
here I am now,
yeah,
doing what I'm doing and loving
correct.
it.
Yeah, correct. Um, Funny, choose yourself. I just posted this morning an interview I did with her name is Sandy Sandhir, an Indian American, and she wrote a book called Choose Yourself.
I love it.
She wrote a book called Choose Yourself. And when I'm interviewing her, I went back into my memory banks, and in the 60s, I read a book called The Virtue of Selfishness by Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
And I use that actually as part of a theme in my first novel.
Mhm.
But basically, that's saying choose yourself because give. You can't give to your children until you're in a place where you can give, and you're in that. So it's a brilliant thing
Yeah.
what you just espoused.
Yeah.
Choose yourself because that's and actually it's what you really need to do to help others.
Yep.
And so, Amy Pease, this has been um, fabulous,
Thanks.
truly. I got 3 pages of notes here as I keep writing and taking notes, and would love for you to come back. And
Yeah.
I do get a
Sure.
chance to see you sometimes and on Mondays, and we kind of hang out in this authors thing.
Yeah.
But you've been delightful and real and caring. And you made my day, truly. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I enjoyed the questions.
Well, thank you.
They
Thank
make
you.
me
Thank
think.
you. Well, I kind of like that. Get to a certain age, you like to
Yep.
think. It's
Yep. Yep.
good. And really, this was great. And please do come back.
Will do.
We'll talk about that. And I'm just going to stop recording. Don't leave. We're going to do a 2-minute
Yep.
wrap.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.